Welcome back. Nowadays I'm able to show you a 2021 sci-fi drama movie titled Swan's Song. Spoilers in advance, watch out and take care. Cameron Turner is a caring family guy residing in a near future in which technology has superior to entire new ranges. He has currently been recognized with a terminal illness. That's the purpose, because he has begun to look at cloning generation. There's a facility controlled by Dr. Scott that creates a great copy of you and implants your reminiscences in it, so the clone is ready to replace your vicinity and lifestyles, whilst your time has come, and Cameron has been going there to go away DNA samples and get his clone prepared, yet he can't nevertheless make his thoughts approximately the problem. One night, even as driving home after any other reminiscence session, he receives a message from Dr. Scott pronouncing that his modern scans show an accelerating deterioration and he must make up his thoughts quickly. Cameron ignores it for now and enters his residence, in which he says hi to the canine and checks on his wife Poppy and his son Cory before going to the toilet, in which he has a seizure. Considering the fact that his wife does not know approximately his illness, he closes the door so she can't see him deal with it by myself. Day after today, he meets with Dr. Scott to go to her facility's dwelling area in which clients stay till they die after the clone has been sent to replace them. After making him signal a contract that announces the clone will never be woken up if he modifications his mind, she introduces him to Dalton, who works as a psychologist and main technician within the control room. The rest of the paintings around the house is completed via AIs. Next, Dalton asks him to disable the cameras on his contacts and his watch before he's allowed into the room wherein his clone is drowsing. Even though sleeping is not quite accurate, because the clone who Dr. Scott is asking Jack for comfort has by no means awoken, but it is nonetheless an empty vessel. Cameron watches it with each awe and shock, hesitating to touch it without the health practitioner's permission. The enjoy proves to be too unsettling for Cameron, who decides now not to go through with it in spite of everything. He returns domestic and maintains to undergo his everyday habitual, with a spouse and son he loves and a designing job he hates, but needs to devour. Cameron's actual passion is artwork. One afternoon, he remembers a conversation he had with Poppy and her twin sibling Andre about the clones, and remembers his wife said that, so long as she could not tell the distinction, she could now not mind them in any respect. This takes Cameron to touch Dr. Scott again, who guarantees that all clones have the part of their recollections that don't forget the power wiped, so that they by no means recognize they may be copies. To ease him into the idea, she tells her about the final clone they sent and how he can meet her to get any doubts out of his mind. The woman is known as Kate, and she or he works as a clerk, so Cameron visits her save and pretends to be a purchaser to interact together with her. Communication is surely regular, and Cameron cannot inform Kate is a clone, neither can her daughter, who is also there with them, and suggests no signs and symptoms of understanding this isn't her real mom. While Cameron returns domestic, he can't help crying when his wife reminds him they'll be dad and mom once more in 7 months due to the fact he realizes he'll now not be able to meet the baby. He considers telling her the fact for a moment, but he can't bring himself to mention it and makes up some excuse, approximately being worried about being a dad once more. In a while, he calls Dr. Scott and tells her he has changed his thoughts. Cameron returns to the power, wherein he meets the real Kate and tells her approximately meeting her clone. They go for a walk together, wherein he mentions her daughter appeared very glad, and that they find out they have the identical oncologist, much like the patient that came before them. Then he calls Poppy to inform him he can be away for every week for a special process. After converting into new clothes supplied by way of the facility, Cameron is placed underneath for 6 hours, at some point of which his recollections could be copied into Jack. As soon as the technique is completed, the next step is to check the synchronization in their minds. This means that Cameron vividly is going through some of his maximum essential recollections, like assembly Poppy, having their first kid, and Andre's death. After numerous synchronization rounds, it is subsequently time to wake up Jack. They place the clone in the unique and distinctive rooms in order that they may have a while getting used to the concept, and Dr. Scott explains to Jack that a freckle at the palm of his hand is the best distinction among him and the unique. It's miles put there on reason in case he desires help remembering which one he is. Cameron spends the evenings calling his family, and one night, while gambling video games online with Cory, he has a seizure. He slightly manages to give up the call earlier than passing out, and tomorrow, he spends some time a walk with Kate once more, throughout which he expresses his fear of demise at any moment without saying goodbye to his family. Afterward, it is eventually time for him to correctly meet Jack, who he finds speaking to Dr. Scott about Poppy with ideal memory accuracy. The two of them stare at each different for some time earlier than Jack confesses how worried he is about the entire deal. Cameron can still now not wrap his thoughts about it, so he's requested to observe even as Dr. Scott interviews Jack to test his reminiscences. Cameron is stunned to see that Jack, no longer most effective, remembers the whole lot flawlessly. He additionally has the equal emotions, approximately those recollections, that he does. After every other brief chat with Kate, who is getting worse every day, Dr. Scott keeps to invite Jack questions, this time with Cameron in the room. Jack talks approximately the difficult instances he went through when Poppy lost Andre, and the goals he keeps having, and he is so good at explaining what Cameron has been feeling and ignoring, that at some point Cameron loses his experience of self, and starts off evolved answering the questions as well. After having lunch collectively, and displaying the same eating conduct, they name Poppy. Cameron is permitted to watch, but Jack is the most effective one speaking to her, and he's terrible at it. Seeing technically some other man being so regular through his spouse without even telling the difference upsets Cameron, who ends the call before deciding he does no longer like any of this. He and Jack begin arguing, or even pushing every different, not agreeing on what to do subsequent, and Cameron best leaves after he starts off evolved feeling ill, finding out he wants to go home and cancel the clone transfer. Sometime later, the two men share a talk approximately their fears when it comes to Poppy and her, getting to know approximately their situation, but it is no longer enough for Cameron to change his thoughts. Although his fitness is not suitable in the meanwhile, he wants to see his family. Whilst the time comes for Cameron to leave, they position cameras on his contact lenses so Jack can inspect his circle of relatives' life and learn a few matters. But Cameron does now not even get to the door of his residence. He begins having a seizure proper within the middle of the road, even losing cognizance for some seconds. Dr. Scott sends an automobile to select him up and bring him back to the facility, which Cameron does not need, however has no different preference to simply accept if he does not need to die in the front of his family. Cameron falls subconscious once more. The men are returned, and Dr. Scott places him to bed with some strong medicine, while telling Dalton to send Jack inside the morning, due to the fact he is ready. Jack is given all of Cameron's garments and add-ons, and is told through Dr. Scott that he can have a week trial with the circle of relatives. If all is going well, then he will come back to have his reminiscences of the cloning technique eliminated. He's going to additionally ought to put on contact lenses with cameras, a good way to reveal his development. When Jack arrives at the residence, everything is going extraordinarily properly. Poppy and Cory cannot inform the difference and speak to him usually, and his reminiscences work perfectly for him in order to interact with them with none problems. The handiest hassle that he encounters is that the canine does now not recognize him and constantly barks at him all of the time. Meanwhile, Cameron wakes up 24 hours later and freaks out whilst he finds out they have dispatched Jack due to the fact he changed into not performed with his own family, but Dr. Scott hits him with a truth test, reminding him he is demise. From then on, Cameron spends maximum of his days looking the video Jack is taking of his own family, only taking a smash to be with Kate when she cannot go away the mattress anymore. Whilst she dies, her ashes are thrown inside the lake. Jack starts off evolved, taking his contacts off increasingly more regularly, not only when he goes to mattress, and Dr. Scott explains it smiles, to offer the circle of relatives a few privacies. However, Cameron begins getting paranoid about feasible hidden reasons. After having a bad dream of Jack mistreating Cory, Cameron makes a decision he has had enough. He steals an old watch of his that they did no longer provide Jack because it's far broken, and later on, he sneaks out of the power in the nighttime, the use of the watch to spark off a ship that takes him lower back to the mainland. He makes it to the residence a few hours later, and the primary room he visits is his office, where he sees all the artwork Jack has been creating and the chat conversations he has had with Poppy, all perfectly normal and domestic. The noise he makes, though, wakes up Jack, who comes over and shows to be very know-how of his presence. Feeling sympathy for him, he lets him to have one remaining night together with his own family, so the two of them change their clothes, scaring the canine when he sees them collectively. Even as Jack hides inside the closet, Cameron wakes Cory up and takes him with him to the kitchen, wherein he teaches him to devour edamame, Poppy's favorite snack to have with beer. Cameron can't help crying even as hugging his son, and after setting him back to bed, he joins Poppy in their personal bedroom. She comforts him when she sees him sad, and that they both agree to call their new toddler Andre after her brother. They cuddle as close as they could, and once Poppy falls asleep, Cameron leaves the room and exchanges clothes with Jack once more. Earlier than returning to the facility, he shakes Jack's hand and thank you him for the whole thing. Cameron spends his time drawing and speaking to new customers about the clone experience. 2 weeks later, Dr. Scott confirms that Jack's recollections of the facility had been deleted, and he is completely Cameron now, which the real Cameron is grateful for. Before he got his memory constant, however, Jack recorded one unique ultimate video for Cameron. He asks Poppy to look him within the eye and to inform him she loves him, which she does as Cameron watches with tears down his face.